So I received my call back in actually the end of January. I was called to the Chile Concepcion mission. I'll be actually getting to Chile in July. I'll be in the Mexico City MTC for the bulk of June, a little bit of July as well. And it is it's really cool. I've been taking Spanish for about 8 years now, and so I was praying and hoping that I'd be able to serve speaking that language, and now here I am. So this is going to be really cool for me. So given this topic of mission prep and kind of preparing for a mission, for me, obviously the big thing on my mind was the actual 2-year mission that I'll be serving. But like Mark was saying in the beginning, I mean, this kind of stuff can apply to any aspect of your life, any point or period of service that you're in. And so one of the things that I did was I have a lot of friends right now that are preparing to serve missions, or I have a few that are already on missions, and some that are still kind of younger, getting ready as well. And so I thought it would be beneficial to just kind of take a poll and to see what are my other friends doing. They're both sisters and future elders. And so I just thought that'd be a good idea to kind of see and get different diverse answers to what they're doing to prepare for their missions right now, as well as, of course, my own thoughts. But I guess I want to start with the overall lesson that I think that I have learned in preparing for a mission, both from being kind of younger in my high school years, but as well as now in college. I mean, this is something that I think helps with any point in time in your life, is developing a life and a structure in your life of habits and routines. This is great for me, especially, I I can get stressed pretty easily, especially being out here in college. And so having a real structure to my days helps me to kind of find peace and a sense of security in knowing that I have a plan for the day and what I'm doing. And so, of course, when you're just in your daily life, that's great too. You have a day where you say, okay, I'm going to work out, I'm going to go get my classes done, get work done, whatever it may be. I'm going to take this time to read the scriptures and take this time to say my prayers, all these things are so structured out. And, I think we all know that the mission life is very structured like that as well. And so learning to do this at a young age, learning to have these routines in your life is a great preparation for those 2 years, especially when you're going to be serving under that kind of strict day-to-day schedule. But keeping that in mind, I think there are two main aspects of preparing for a mission, which we always hear about in the gospel, and that's kind of the spiritual side as well as the temporal side of things. Because obviously you're going to be serving the Lord, you're going to be preaching the gospel for 2 years. That's going to be a lot of spiritual stuff. But at the same time, you're going to be in a different country, you're going to be in a different state, wherever you are. And so there are going to be a lot of temporal lessons as well that you have to learn. So I think there are a lot of different things you can do to prepare. And I just have a few different thoughts here from myself and from my friends that I like to share. And hopefully you can find at least one thing that'll maybe help you prepare for your own mission or whatever period in your life that you're in right now. So starting with some of the spiritual things, I think right now for me, the main goal is to try to solidify my testimony and my doctrinal knowledge of the gospel. Now, that being said, I feel like a lot of people, they're under this impression that in order to serve a mission, you have to know the ins and outs of the gospel. You have to know everything because you think, oh, if I'm going to go teach someone, I better know every part of this so I can answer every question. And I think there's a grain of truth to that in the sense that, it's good to have a foundation and to know, the generals and things like that. But the mission, as far as I've learned, is as much a learning experience for you as it is for the people that you're teaching and serving. The Lord doesn't take lightly the sacrifice that you're willing to make if you're willing to serve a 2-year mission or 18-month mission for him. It is so important that we just give it our best and we try, because we can't be expected to learn everything. I mean, that's not the point of faith. Faith is a hope, and it's a willingness to learn and not necessarily a perfect knowledge of anything. And so I think that's just important to note right off the bat, is that you're not expected to know everything when you're doing this, but trying to solidify that knowledge now is really important. And part of that for me is I am working specifically on developing and exemplifying the different Christ-like attributes, specifically the ones that are outlined in Preach My Gospel, but they can be tough sometimes. The biggest ones for me right now are patience, as well as kindness. And of course, one of my favorites is long suffering and resilience as well. And just that kind of that idea of having that grit and being able to get through the tough times and be able to just stick it out for the long run. I can imagine that that's going to be incredibly important too once I'm actually out in the field. But that's really in the forefront of my mind. Another thing that one of my friends was talking about that he's praying for his mission is that they tell you before you serve a mission that you should reread the Book of Mormon cover to cover before you go and serve. And he was saying that he really thought that was just super important because he figured that the Book of Mormon is probably one of the biggest things you're going to be teaching on the mission since he's going to Uruguay. And so a lot of it is Catholicism down there, and they're reading the Bible and things like that. So he thought that the Book of Mormon would be the biggest selling point. That's what he would have to really work on the most. And so he's focusing on the lessons in the Book of Mormon specifically, as a way for him to prepare for his mission. And I'm doing the same as well. And I know a lot of other people are, because there are just so many nuggets of truth in there and so many applications to our day that you can find in the Book of Mormon itself that are just so apparent in today's society. And it's just really important that we focusing on that. Another thing, and I apologize for how listed this sounds, but there are just so many things that I could talk about that I thought I'd just put as many in here as I could. But if you haven't had the chance yet, I mean, I can't even recommend enough that you get your patriarchal blessing. It is one of the best things I think you can do to prepare for just about anything in your life. I mean, I don't know if anything is as much a testament of Christ's and our Heavenly Father's love for us than our patriarchal blessings, because it is literally a piece of scripture that is written specifically for you. It is something that you can't find anywhere else, and it is just so specific and particular, and it's just contoured exactly for you. And it is just so beautiful to read that and to get that comfort and the strength and the blessings that come from that. I try to reread it at least once a week if I can, especially when you're having those hard days, when you feel like you're just kind of going through the motions or whatever it may be. If you take the time to really read that and feel again what you felt when you first received it, it can be really special, and it can give you the extra push that you need that day. So again, if you haven't received that, I'd really encourage that. Another thing is reading conference talks, which I know, especially when you're young, it's really boring. And honestly, I didn't start reading them until I had to for my classes here at BYU. But they actually have some good stuff in them. I feel like every time I read one, I come away with one thing that I hadn't thought about before. Even if it is like a 15-minute read, there's always something. And specifically, this was cool. It was actually the day after I had received my mission call to Concepcion, and I was reading this talk that was assigned for my Book of Mormon class, and the very first thing in that talk was when President Nelson announced the Chile Concepcion Temple, which I thought was just a silly coincidence, but it was neat, and it was kind of just a silly little experience, but it was really cool to just see kind of how everything in the gospel it seems connected. So yeah, that was just a funny experience. But another thing that is really big, especially at BYU, but also I know that some wards do this as well, is having a mission prep class or just kind of group. At BYU, there's specific classes you can actually take for credit and for grades. But I know that I took one in my ward where we had assistant missionaries at the time that were serving would come in and they would teach us lessons, or we would practice teaching lessons from Preach My Gospel, or practice just kind of scenarios and situations that we might come into in our regular lives, not even as missionaries, but just as high school students. And that was really cool to kind of get that experience, because I think, it's hard to get a true understanding of what it's like to be a missionary and go out and actually teach the gospel. But when you practice what you would say and how you would respond in those situations to the questions you might receive, it's a really good teacher. I know that my junior year, I was able to spend some time with the missionaries when they would teach lessons, and it's just so cool to see how missionaries work together. I mean, you can really see that they are both driven by the Spirit when they speak. It's like one sister would say something, and then just flawlessly the next sister would step in with her thoughts, and the Spirit would flow so smoothly through it. And I'm sure they were both very seasoned and they knew what they were doing. But the fact that maybe I could do that someday was really cool to witness and to learn. The next big thing is the temple, and I know that it may be difficult for some people, especially considering the limited number of temples and maybe reopenings and things like that, and how some temples may not be operational at the time, but they can be just so influential in your life. I try to go to the temple every week, and I have a good group that does it, and we often just do the baptisms because that's what most people are able to do right now. And I think, one thing that I learned in one of my classes here at BYU too is that the Lord is just always looking for sacrifice, and he always appreciates any sacrifice that you give him. And the biggest one that we can give, especially as young people, is just our time. Obviously, the 2-year, 18-month mission is a big sacrifice of time, but even just time to go to the temple, time to study scriptures, time to pray, things like that. Even if it's not the most, fervent prayer you've ever given, the fact that you're doing it in the first place, it's a start, and the Lord appreciates that. And he acknowledges that. And so the group that I like to go to the temple with, I like to go at 7 a.m. And so it's definitely a sacrifice there of some quality sleep. But I will say every time I leave the temple, I feel a lot better than I would have when I woke up at 8:45 on a regular day. And just the blessings of the temple are incredible. They also offer a lot of temple prep classes. I know they do some in certain stakes and wards, but as well as at BYU. One of the friends I was talking to about her mission she's preparing, and she said that she likes to just read all of the information that the church puts out about the temple and how to prepare for that, because a lot of it is really sacred and it's not super openly talked about, but there are resources out there that can help you to kind of prepare yourself for what you're going to do. And she was just saying that she finds a lot of peace in that. And another thing that this sister does, and she's great, but she'll also do weekly come follow me with another sister that they're both going on missions, and they like to use that as a time to prepare for when they're going to be teaching lessons, when they're going to be having to instruct other people that have never heard of the gospel. So they'll go and they'll read the come follow me stuff together, and then they'll both share their thoughts, and it's like they're practicing to be sister missionaries, and that's really cool as well. And finally, the last spiritual thing that I want to talk about, and this is mainly contoured towards the future elders here, is obtaining and being ordained to the Melchizedek priesthood as soon as you possibly can. I think that for me, that was it's been one of the most impactful things that I've done in the past couple of years. And I would just say, don't delay it. For a while there, I was like, I don't, maybe I'm just kind of scared to get it. I don't know what it was, but I didn't really want to take that step for whatever reason. And my stake president back home was like, no, you gotta get this done, because when you're at BYU, when you're out in the world, there are going to be people at midnight on a Wednesday who need a blessing from you, and you need to be there to be able to give them that. And so because of that, I got it before I came out here, and since then, that has happened. I've given a few blessings, and I think that the spirit that you feel when you're able to exercise the priesthood in that capacity, no matter what end you're on, whether you're receiving the blessing, whether you're giving it, whether you're standing in, whatever you're doing, I mean, just witnessing the power of God is so incredible. And to me, the idea that maybe that's what's going to be like for the next few years of my life, that's pretty cool, because there are just some really great feelings and great experiences from that. So I'm really grateful for the Melchizedek priesthood, and I encourage everyone that's able to get that as soon as possible. Okay, so now switching over to more of the temporal things. These things, I guess, can be a little more fun or a lot less fun. I guess it depends on what you think. So for me right now, the big one, of course, is practicing my Spanish. Like I said, I've been taking it for a few years. But some things I've done are I've set my Siri on my phone to be in Spanish. So that's helpful, I guess. Again, I read the Book of Mormon in Spanish. One of my friends, she's preparing for a mission. She's called to I think it's Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic mission. And she is practicing speaking Spanish with her brother who served a mission. So practicing getting that conversation in is really big. She's also working on the church's language app, which is called Embark, which I didn't even know they had an app. But the church actually, they offer a lot of, I guess, Spanish tutoring. And I'm sure they do it for every language. But once you get your mission call, you're given a lot of opportunities to practice the language before you go out and then to see. Another big thing when you think about your mission is you spend a lot of time talking with people, right? Talking with strangers. And so I guess something to practice too is just talking to random people around you, which I know for some people that can be really difficult. I've experienced that before, where sometimes, maybe you're just shy or reserved, or you're not super comfortable with talking to people, but getting out of your comfort zone, I think, is going to be a huge thing on any mission or on any point in your life. And so getting used to that, getting used to having conversation with strangers and talking about meaningful things is really important, as well as learning how to express your emotions. Because we learn in the church that the gospel is taught through the Spirit. And I feel that the Spirit is most present when you actually are vulnerable and when your emotion is showing. And so I feel like getting a control of your emotions and knowing how to use them for your benefit and for others is really going to be helpful. Another one is eating foods that maybe you're not used to. I've been doing a lot of research on Chile, and one of their big things is they like to eat a whole lot of hot dog. And what they'll do is they'll get a hot dog, right? Pretty large one, and they'll slather it with mayo or guacamole, onions, pico de gallo, all that kind of stuff. And it's just this fully loaded hot dog, which I hear that and I'm like, maybe I could go without that for 2 years, but I'm sure they'll be delicious. And so I'm excited to at least try what they have out there. But that's another thing is just researching your mission, I guess if you haven't gotten your call, like the possible missions, where you could go, what you could do, like the living conditions, things like that is really cool. I know one of my buddies, he's going to Resistencia, Argentina, and he has been researching all kinds of stuff about the weather. He's learned that they get a whole bunch of floods and stuff. And so he's just, I guess, preparing mentally for a lot of the I guess the more temporal hardships that he might endure down there. But it's really cool to learn more about, I guess, what you're going to be doing in the day-to-day life as well, and looking at the mission guidelines, the standards, and things like that. And of course, when it comes to missions as well, I think most missions, there's a lot of walking, it has a lot of biking, some have cars and things like that. But I think it's important to be in good physical shape, as well as obviously spiritual and mental shape. But really, maybe starting to walk more, getting to work out a little bit more, just so that you can serve the Lord at your best ability physically. So that honestly, that's pretty much that's a good comprehensive list, I'd say. But honestly, the closer I get, it feels like the more excited I really am to get going, to get started. I know the last time I was on here, I expressed that a couple of years ago, I wasn't all that excited about serving a mission because I thought it was going to interrupt everything. I was going to be gone for a long time, and it was going to be hard to adjust back to life afterward, and all these things, because I always thought about what could go wrong. And I realized, actually, as I was taking a finance class, our professor explained to us that there's risk in everything, but we always think that risk is the probability of something going wrong. But that's not the case. The risk is the difference. It's things going right or things going wrong, right? Because if financially, if you make an investment, yeah, you could lose 10% or you could gain 20%, right? And it's the same thing with a mission or anything else in your life, right? Of course, there's risk of things going bad, but there's also significant risk of things going really well for you. And so that's what I like to keep in mind is anytime I think of anything negative about a mission or about anything in life, I'm like, well, yeah, maybe that could happen. But at the same time, there's maybe an equally likely chance of something even better happening, something that will improve my life. And so I'm just getting so excited to get out and serve. And so I hope that at least one of you guys have taken something from this extensive list of all these different things you can do to prepare for a mission, because there are really so many things, and there are way more than I even mentioned today. But I wish you all the best of luck with whatever mission you're embarking on, whether it's a 2-year, 18-month mission, or if it's just the mission of getting through a day or whatever it may be. And I'm confident that, whatever your mission is, it will be life defining, and it will be something that's super important for you and for your family, and it will just bless everyone around you. And I say this in Jesus' name, amen.